things you're going to find is that the oil filter on an LS is really close to the cross member. So you are not going to be able to put an oil filter on there. So pretty easy to deal with. There's fancier and less fancy ways to do this, but since I wanted to run an oil cooler anyway, and I wanted some ports for oil pressure, I'm probably not going to worry about oil temp right now on this engine, but oil pressure, I got and I've used one like this before, but this is from Transdapt. Again, there are other companies that make this, but I'll put a link, but it's Transdapt 291. And what this comes with, and this is pretty handy, I didn't even know this when I got it, but there's actually multiple ports on this one, so you can choose to come out the bottom. I won't do that because I'm just going to have to use 90-degree fittings, which you should try to avoid if you can, or you can come out here. So that's going to screw in there, and then the oil lines can come in and out of that. The other handy part is these you can use for your oil pressure or your oil temp. If you don't use them, this kit, I went and bought one off Amazon before I knew this, but this kit comes with plugs. So for whatever holes you don't use, you use the plugs. If you wanted to do AN oil lines, you could. These are 1/2-inch NPT barbs. That's just what I'm going to use on this car. I'm really not worried about having some race-proof oil system at this point. I've run barbs on other cars for a long time, and I've never had any issues with it. So I got that. And then, so what this kit comes with, and what's kind of nice about it, is it comes with these adapters, and they allow you to use all sorts of different oil filters, probably just two, but at least a couple different ones. These outside threads are all the same. They screw into here. Then that screws on like your oil filter, and then the inside screws is the thread of whatever's on your engine. So you can actually test. It's easy to test because what you're really looking for is just one that's going to screw on to your engine. So I believe for this one it's that adapter, but I'm going to get under there and find out. So once you have that on there, then you end up running lines. Those lines go to your remote oil filter that attaches here, and then to your thermostat. Now I have a thermostat already from when I was running it on my Datsun project. There are more expensive ones like this that come with a thermostat and this together. This whole kit cost me like 41 bucks. That piece alone was 200 or close to it, I want to say. It's super cool, and I do have one for the Datsun. It cleans up the running of the lines a little bit, or at least the connections that you have, but this car, I don't want to mess with it, so I will use the thermostat that I use with the Datsun and this, and I'm going to run it up front to the oil cooler. So it comes with an O-ring. O-ring was a little distorted, but all you need to do is just actually push it down. Pushing right here, super easy. It just spins right on there. So you just find the threads that do that, and then you're set. And then once you've done that, this is the part that I'm kind of anxious about. And you spin it on, and let's hope to God that it comes out the right way. I'm not in love with that. I kind of get what other people have said, where there's not necessarily a way to... I mean, that's snug, and honestly, if you're using this like you would an oil filter where you don't want to crank it on, I got room. Got room to snug that up a little bit. So, see that? So that angle, you don't get it coming straight out, and there's not a great way to set that. I think with sandwich adapters, but this isn't really a sandwich adapter. Okay, so the next step is determining where I want my cooler and where I want my remote oil filter to be. Lexus has, my car hasn't had it for a while, but they actually had a pretty nice under tray you can buy. I think they still make them. I saw it on another YouTube channel. Aluminum under trays, which is what I'm gonna go with if they have them. Kind of gives you a chance to see how Lexus did the air. I mean, and basically it comes in through here, and then they sealed it off so that everything was going. That's the condenser right there. So that leads us to the next section. Again, I'll post links, but this is just typical oil cooler hose. You can see there you can get a pretty decent bend out of it if you need it. It even says on here 3-inch bend. So I think that was like 28 bucks for 12 feet. This right here is a fitting that goes into the oil adapter, and then it has a 1/8 NPT for putting your sensors in. I've used these before. I used it on my 510. I have a much bigger one on my 510 now, but this is a True Cool oil cooler. Again, I've used them before. I've never had any issues. I don't think that they're anything special, but they've also never failed on me. And I ran 2 in series on the 510 for a while, but I ran one of those for 10 plus years right out in the front of the car, and I never had any problems with it whatsoever. So they come in a few different sizes. I think this is 11 by 11. By 11. As you can see, this is a pretty big guy, I'm not gonna lie. It's more important that you put the supply line to the bottom so that it forces stuff out the top and keeps air pockets, or so I've heard. I think what I might do, if you've ever seen how they mount radiator fans, they have basically a zip tie type material that it's light. Zip tie type material that sticks through the core. So I could actually, I mean, kind of nice to have some space between those two, but you can get foam and kind of set it off a little bit. So I'm going to show you part of the problem we're dealing with. So this is now clocked in a better way. So I figured that out. Problem is, you can't put that and screw it in because it's too close to the pan. And if you screw it in ahead of time, it hits the cross member right here. And I already modified this. I would say you do need to do that if you're going to do this, unless you are willing to raise the engine more. And in my instance, I don't think I could really do that with the transmission. Problem is trying to get this oil pressure sender up in there. So I think what's going to solve my problem, so if I take this fitting and I cut it here, that's going to allow me to spin that in, and then I can tap it for, I'll show you. So I have an 1/8 inch NPT tap, which is what pretty handy to have if you're going to do gauge stuff. So this is very close, but I didn't want it to go in because I'm going to tap this, and I should be able to screw that in there, and that's going to take care of both problems. So, should be able to see, get it to focus. There's threads in there now. So I'll Teflon tape things. Oops. Right, now what I want to do is double check and see whether we can spin this in there. Yes, so see right here it was hitting before, not hitting anymore. So you do have a certain amount of leeway with these tapered fittings where they get tight, and then you could probably leave it or you could really crank down on it. I can show you how this thing was able to be clocked. So again, I mentioned before, you're putting it on as tight as you would a oil filter, so it doesn't have to be cranked on there. But this moves in and out, and there's a certain, I mean, you can see down in there, it's in there quite a ways. Well, by moving this in and out, that also adjusts when this comes to a stop. So before, when I was doing it, it was like that. I did some adjustment with this, and I was able to get it where it comes out where we want it. So that's how you do it on these. I initially thought you didn't have that ability, and I think one of the reviews, guy was all angry that you couldn't clock it, you couldn't put it on there correctly, but sometimes you just got to use your brain a little bit. No offense, guy. No, I don't love that. Their own fitting is hitting the adapter. There, maybe it's going to have to self-clearance a little bit. View of the problem. So once you start screwing this in here, that ends up interfering right there. So I'm going to grind that down. Plenty of room. Cranking it this way. Looks to be all we need down here. So this is the next step in installing a remote oil filter. The line from that adapter is going to go here in, then it's going to go out. Then this is an oil thermostat. You have to look at some instructions online, but I labeled these. from the filter to the oil cooler, from the oil cooler back to the engine. So it takes a little bit of figuring as far as how you want to mount stuff, but this guy's the first one to be mounted, so that's what we're going to do. So the next step in this is finding out where I want to put the oil cooler, and I need fittings in there for that, so pretty much a repeat of what we just did on the adapter. And so next is determining the routing on this thing. It's a little complex, that's why that one that I have for my 510 is so nice, because all this is included in one, and you have a lot less connections, but so be it. That's not going to happen on this car right now. Okay, so there's this pretty stiff plastic air guide, and there's a little bit of flex, but it's an oil filter. It's just sitting there doing nothing. So you can actually see it through the bumper grill there. So now that we have that in place, this is in, so that's going to come from under here and loop around, and maybe from over here. The filter. Trying to decide where to put that. So, had a little change of plans. I had the outlets coming out of here and straight before. When you're dealing with that thermostat, it just makes too many loops and too much complication. So I flipped it. I put 90 degrees. You want to keep 90 degree fittings out of your system as much as you can, but sometimes you need them. So 90 degrees fittings, and it's going to make things a lot easier. Okay, so everything is hooked up. Lines run from there. I need to clamp stuff still, get hoses on completely, double check all that stuff, but run from there. They go up under until they get to right here, back up until they get to right here. They come around till they hook in. That's in, then out to the thermostat. It's the worst camera working in the history of mankind. Out of the thermostat. So out of the thermostat, down to the end of the oil cooler, then out of the oil cooler, into the thermostat, and then back to the engine. So everything's tight back here. Probably again do a few more zip ties just to keep things looking better, but as far as being in place and falling apart or anything else, I'm not worried about any of that. And that is installing an oil cooler. plan for motor mounts. Got a welder. I have a GM mount ×2. It came with the engine already drilled for these 4 holes to mount it to the block. My plan is to, these are rivets basically, cut these rivets out, separate that motor mount out, and use this backing plate as the basis for my motor mount that attaches to the engine. Alright, so now this fit, not the thickest ever. You want to reinforce that, but at the least I have a nice base. I'll probably end up welding part of the pipe or part of the mount that goes downward with an extra plate in here. But we'll see. Baby steps. So, first time I'm going to use this, but kind of handy. And even with this little guy, I'll blow the breaker in my garage if I'm up to max, which on some of this I'm probably going to be. So when I got a TIG welder, I wired in this 50 amp circuit. And I got myself a giant 220 extension cord. And along with that, probably don't need it for this one, I got myself an adapter. So plugs right in there like that. Like your wall socket. So now I'm never ever going to be blowing breakers on this thing, which is kind of nice, because especially when you get in the middle of a good bead, a lot of sheet metal work, you're never going to have this problem. But when you start cranking it up, I would always blow it. It's on the same circuit as the TV and the lights, everything shuts down, and it's annoying, so I don't have that problem anymore. So, got my little plates cut out, got the mill scale, mentioned that a little bit earlier, but not going to want to weld to that. So I'm going to put these plates in like that, weld them up. Well, that sucks. Looks like my Chinese welder maybe finally gave up the ghost. Okay, so start making motor mounts. Isolator part, hockey pucks, made in Czech Republic for what it's worth. I'm gonna cut. This is looks like 1/4 inch. I have 1/2 inch bolts, so these are going to go through there and down through there and then down through the subframe, part of the mount that attaches to the engine. These old control arms that I used to use, I'm guessing this metal is quite thick. I'm going to double check, but I am planning on using that as the portion that goes from here to there. Okay, so there you go, plates. I'm actually, if you're looking at the engine, this thing, gonna come down here, be welded there. It's nowhere near the length or whatever, but this, and then the cross member. So this stuff's quite a bit thinner, but I am going to want something that is up against the cross member besides just that, because the cross member is significantly smaller, so it would dig into that part of it, so I'm going to back it with metal. Okay, so I've cut 2 plates the bottom, so imagine this is cross member. It's gonna go there, it's gonna go on top, it's gonna go there. One of these gets welded up and meets that guy. Okay, so I got the holes drilled in all these plates. And the thicker ones had mill scale. So we're going to weld, and you want a good joint, go ahead and grind that stuff off. I didn't grind it on this side because I'm not going to be welding to that side, but this side I ground it off. So that piece, need to drill holes in the puck. That piece on top. Once again, one of these in one fashion or another welded down here. Up to that. Okay, so I crawled under there and figured out I need about 5.5 inches. I am going with this system because A, I have the part. I mean, there would be zero reason to really do this if you didn't have it, but I did. And it's a good wall thickness. Gives me a little adjustability if I, for whatever reason, find out that my engine needs to be angled up. I don't have to shim it. I can actually just move this like you would a tie rod. So I'm cutting off 5.5, making this 5.5 inch total length. And then if I need it longer or shorter, I have some give right there. These are going to need to be angled. How much yet? I don't know. It's going to be a little experimentation, but I'm going to start off with the 5.5 and see where that leaves us. So the next step is I'm going to use these, but a lot of uneven surfaces, and I don't want to be welding to that and filling gaps and what have you. So I've got some thicker stuff that I can reinforce as well, so I'm going to weld that in there. That'll give it a little more strength and, more importantly, just an even surface too. Not too bad. Missed a spot, but came back and got it. It's not falling apart. You know, it ain't falling apart. So this is the part that I really miss having a MIG for, because I got the plate right there, got another one there, and all I want to do is tack this enough it off here, keep its position, and take it to the bench. And with a MIG, I would just reach up there right now and go zzz. TIG, I've got to worry about pressing this pedal down and some other stuff, but we'll figure it out. So tack on there. It's super hard to do this. Normally you want 3 tacks. I'm going to try and gently get this thing out of there and tack the other couple before I final weld. Hopefully that works. MIG's coming Tuesday. Worst case, I can't do it, but got a pretty good tack on there, so I think I should be okay. Okay, so here's the motor mount, painted up with some Hammerite. Everything's welded on there. Again, it's not a pro job, but I don't think it's falling apart. So I will go ahead and put this one on. I'm waiting for the other one to cool down still, and hopefully we'll get them in tonight. So got the other one installed. This is the one for the passenger side. Gonna get that bad boy installed. It's actually pretty handy to have the adjustability when I'm installing these things, but at any rate, ready to go in.